Hello and welcome to another episode of Darkness in Dublin. We'll lay our scene, continuing where we left off yesterday, with two of the mages meeting in the Agabar Nights, a bar in Dublin hosted by the Tafani craft, to continue talking about time and other problems.
Well, Daniela just kind of sits by and starts preparing the little heated cubes on top of one of the hookahs in the middle of their kind of seating arrangement. And she just kind of looks her up and says, well, the beginning part of that conversation was quite awkward.
Yes. It's, well, but hopefully a lesson learned. And
it's always weird making a bad impression against the master of the universe.
Hopefully not too bad an impression. I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's used to all sorts of petitioners knocking on his door with strange questions.
Just because he's used to it doesn't mean it's not just as annoying. But hopefully, maybe I can repay it to him on Christmas. Well, I don't really know what. We'll go with winter solstice. That seems to be more widespread.
How many?
Didn't realize.
How many times have you met him?
A few times. I remember. I'm not sure if you were there. Don't quite remember, but I was one of the people with the team that went to save him when he was kidnapped at his own library by the Sins.
No, I wasn't involved in that.
Yeah, that was an endeavor.
So, yeah, I've not had a proper conversation with him before that. I mean, I saw him somewhat at Halloween, as mentioned.
Yeah, ever since that day, he seems worn.
Well, it's understandable given the weight of the years.
Yeah. That takes a couple puffs of the hookah.
I mentioned my grandparents, my mentor's mentor, meeting with him. I don't know if you were involved in the events around him.
I've heard things, but memory's shaky on them.
He was, yes. Again, I wasn't involved in those events myself, but I've also heard things about them.
What did you hear?
Well, I know. Well, I gather he was a master of time, correspondence, and forces. I gather I heard he, rather saved the city from the Nefandi back in the 80s. But then in his later years, he became obsessed with an old love that he'd lost and sought to overly meddle in time. And I think eventually was slain by other mages.
Yikes. Damn shame that just when people want to see the loved ones again, the universe makes it very hard for them to see them again.
Yes.
Damn shame.
I say I not something to dwell on my mind lately, but firstly after meeting him at Halloween, and secondly after all this talk of time, I just wishes he was still with us.
He teach you anything about time?
Not me. My most of my tuition came from, say, D'Onofrio, and she's that's not really her area. But still, it's I don't know. I think time is not something Hermetics are famous for mastering. I don't know. Perhaps our paradigm is less suited to it.
Oh, how so? Aren't all things, up for grabs in the guys who try to get a deeper understanding of things?
Oh, I'm sure some do, but maybe it's just I don't know. I gather a lot of the way time mages seem to talk. They seem to talk very, shall we say, very modern ways of conceptions of time, whereas a tradition which is still rooted in ultimately the classical world or the Middle Ages has we have a different, more traditional conception of time. Maybe that hampers us.
That time is what? Absolute?
I'm not sure. It's absolutely absolute, but it's certainly I don't know. We tend not to think of it quite so much.
Might be something to think about.
Oh.
Times. Have you ever seen the movie Arrival?
I'm not sure.
Well, it seems like sleepers. Be surprised, or unless they're not sleepers, and someone else promoted the movie. But it was about how language can affect our perceptions of reality, and how basically there were these aliens that had a kind of language that if you learnt it, you stopped seeing time linearly. It's very interesting. Because I know one thing about you guys, from what I've been told, is that you're all about language.
Yes, we understand language is important. Well, I think you just said as much.
Right.
And as we said the other day, knowing where the word religion comes from gives insight into what religion is for.
Yeah.
And knowing the name of a thing is to understand it, to understand its core being and purpose. I made that point to Raphael. The name Raphael literally means God heals or God has healed. That is fundamentally what he does.
If something is made and then you name it, is naming it as important? Is the name so important?
Well, there is a distinction between a used name or a name which is a label which is used to refer to something, and it's fundamentally its true name. It's the word that defines its essential nature.
It's weird to me. I don't know. Seems like almost a symbolic way of looking at things. But still cool.
Well,
interesting knowing that, everyone has a true name or something like that.
Perhaps some other examples would help. As I said, Raphael literally means God heals. And of course, at some level, that's what Raphael was doing. He was healing a fallen angel by giving it a new celestial body.
Yes, that is what it did.
Or at least trying to do. Or I mean, the very name of God of God Himself. I don't know. Are you familiar with this?
A little bit. I thought God, from my understanding, God has many names.
There are certainly many names or titles used to refer to God. There is the name which there is a name which is recorded, but because it was not spoken casually, the correct pronunciation is debated. The Jews believe it's pronounced Jehovah. Christians believe it's pronounced Yahweh. It's actually the same characters in the original language.
I know some people thought it was just who. H-U.
Yahweh literally means, well, sometimes it's pronounced I am, but a more detailed translation would be I am what I am. However, in the original language, it does not convey any sense of tense or time. So it would be equally correct to say I was what I am or I am what I will be. Or various other combinations.
So one could argue that God is almost a state of being. At least one way to interpret it.
Yes. My reading firstly is fundamentally God is almost as a definitional absolute, even if nothing else exists, and indeed before nothing else existed, God is. Existence is the fundamental nature of God to exist. It does not require anything else to create him or for him to begin. And secondly, to say a phrase like I am what I will be, that references the eternal nature of God, in that he is what he always will be. He will never not be or change. He always is what he is. But you're right. Another name for God is the Hebrew character translates as El. That's the same syllable which appears in the names of all the major archangels. So Raphael, Gabriel, Michael, Uriel, and so on.
Raphael, yeah. Azrael. She kind of leans back and thinks about that for a moment and says, you think that's something that we have to try and comprehend, or something that we already do? It's just so simple we don't really realize it.
I think these matters of deep theology have almost limitless depth to them. You can understand them. They can be explained in relatively simple terms to someone, but there is a difference between an understanding that comes from a following explanation and a deeper insight, and an understanding the deeper truth, and understanding the deeper many layers of subtle meaning.
Sounds like you're talking about gnosis.
Quite possibly.
Yeah. Are you, what do you think God is? Seems like it's very important to you.
What do I think God is? Well, I think I just answered that question already.
I think you did. I suppose when you close your eyes and imagine it, and the things that you feel, does it hold up to the definition you just told me, or does it? Do you encounter it as something else? I guess what I'm trying to ask is, when you encounter God in your personal life, what is it like for you?
I I'm I'm tempted to say I experience it as a presence. I mean, anyone can walk into St. Patrick's Cathedral over there and sit in the quiet and open their heart and mind, and they will feel the presence of God.
Mm.
That's not to say, I'm not. It's not just something which is seen or necessarily heard. That we might use those terms metaphorically, but nonetheless, we feel His presence. I've once or twice in my life, I have experienced what felt to me to be direct intervention, the hand of God moving upon the earth.
Was it kind of undefinable, or something that you could put into words, that experience?
Okay, takes a deep breath, looking, hands clasped, looking thoughtful on that. How would I put it into words?
Well, more what I was asking is, can you?
Not easily. um, perhaps by way of contrast, mages generally we assert and affirm our will upon the world. I had this discussion with a young student recently about Aleister Crowley's definition of magic, the art of bringing about change in accordance with one's will. And he agreed with that definition, and then failed to see the rhetorical trap that if you accept it, every conscious act possible becomes an act of magic. But I digress. Magic, or perhaps all conscious acts that we affirm our will upon the world. When last I felt a direct expression of God, I moved myself beyond that. I ceased trying to assert my will upon the world, and simply opened a channel, a door, and said, and asked for the will of the one above to intercede with, and I did so with, I would like to say with the goodness in my heart, but shall we say with hope and sincere belief that would happen. I mean, Jesus says that if someone asks a mountain to get them and throw itself into the ocean in sure and certain hope, then it will. Now, I've never thought to put that to the test, but and the Bible does say something about not putting the Lord your God to the test. But to simply put aside one's active will and simply say, I ask for this. I ask for help here, and I have hope that it will be granted, and it was.
Surrendering, kind of.
I mean, you could try to argue that act is itself an act of will.
That's true too.
You could make it, but that's sophisticatory. I feel there is a distinction between the active working of will that mages do, possibly Hermetic slightly more so because our tradition emphasizes exerting one's will, and putting one's faith in things working out.
This is important to do that. What do you, that seems like a fair enough answer to me. I mean, if you want to get technical, there's raw thought all around us, the energy that kind of makes everything what it is. One way, you could say the whole universe is magical.
No.
Everything that happens in it.
That depends how you define magic or magical. Well, perhaps we should return to the digression.
Right.
What would you say to Aleister Crowley's definition? Any conscious, the art of bringing about change in accordance with one's will.
In conformity to the will, that shall be done in the whole of the law, or something like that.
Well, yeah, he doesn't. Yeah, I give one of his quotes. He also talks about "do what thou wilt" should be the whole of the law, which is an often misunderstood quote. When he says "do what thou wilt," he doesn't mean just do what you feel like. He means
do it with thought and consideration and deliberation and planning, right?
Actually, that's not wrong, but I would go beyond that. I think he means something akin to your purpose, your destiny, your reasons for being. Almost, fulfill your true name.
Well, I guess for me, I'll say this, I don't really call it magic, and I don't really call it science either, whatever this is, because, I imagine sometimes what other beings out there, she kind of looks towards the window to where the stars are kind of glinting out. What other beings out there might call it. It's definitely something. She kind of breathes out from him. I guess what I think of what he said was, I don't know, it doesn't feel like I'm using my will.
No,
it feels like I'm tuning into something.
The problem with Crowley's definition is it includes almost anything. When you cook food or make a cup of tea, you've brought about change in accordance with your will. It means everything you do, unless it's an accident, is magic, which is not particularly helpful functional definition.
I mean, cooking is something not many animals do.
True.
I mean, if you compare it to the rest of the animal kingdom, it's a pretty magical act.
But,
I guess what I'm trying to say is maybe more things we see as mundane maybe are magical too, just not as magical. Right? So you look at an item that was infused with quintessential power by a mage, it's going to be quite the potent object. Then you have, smartphone that was made by some kid in his garage that they jailbroke. I mean, may not be the same, may not be as powerful. Still has quintessence in it. Still has that person's own bit of himself into it, and they can do it and they can use it to change the world just as much as the super object does. Maybe the whole act of the universe is an act of magic. Maybe existence in itself is, if you want to look at it that way, miraculous. But it has its flaw. But then, you get into the problem of why is everything, why are a lot of things screwed up and awful? And there are all sorts of answers. But I guess that's usually where I'm at these days. It's just saying I'm not sure. A little bit sure than I was yesterday, but still can't say I can answer the question properly. So maybe Carly is right. Maybe everything that happens is magic.
Everything deliberate, at least.
Everything deliberate, yeah. It's definitely very different from doing something non-deliberately. Just doing something out of instinct. But I guess for me personally, I don't think it's true for everyone, because at least for me, this is where she kind of gets this look like she's really searching deep to try and articulate something. I don't really know how to describe it, honestly. I guess it's like being in multiple places at once. It's like there's more to you than just you here right now. There's something beyond yourself that's still you. And you kind of have to I guess that's where my description ends. I don't really know how to describe it past that.
Well, I mean, there's a trail of consequences of our past actions. There's all the people that we've influenced and changed, the people that we've fought and loved. There's potentially our offspring, be it actual children or apprentices that we've trained, who will go on and do things after us.
I remember seeing an article about epigenetic memory. So even the things we experience can affect our kids, potentially.
Well, and following that, the literary concept that the sins of the fathers are born by the children.
What are your thoughts on sin? Is sin as specific as they say it is, or is it something? Is it willful ill, or is it just a bug in a computer?
What are my thoughts on sin? I think that fundamentally sin is when one chooses to act not in accordance with the wishes of the one above. I mean, fundamentally, if people treat their neighbours with love, they generally don't sin. And if that love is not there, then generally they probably are sinning sooner or later. I'm sure there are details, complexities that could be gone into, but generally speaking, and that to sin is, and that sin is wrong, almost definitionally so. Now the world is a complex place, and we're all imperfect creatures, and all men are sinners. But we should. That does not excuse us trying to do the best we can and aspiring to be better.
Fair, I guess.
Um,
I guess.
I now I would consider heaven to be, to be with God, and that hell is almost defined as the absence of God. Therefore, if you choose now, God would prefer people to be with Him because it's good for them. But because we have free will, we have that choice. We can either accept Him and be with Him, or not. It's not a Hell is not a punishment. It's simply a consequence. In the same way that someone who smokes gets lung cancer, the lung cancer is not a punishment. It's a consequence of their actions. Now, God, by definition, is good, and God cannot therefore completely ignore the consequences of sin, because that would be manifestly unjust and not good. What He can do is take the sin upon Himself, to pay the debt, essentially. But again, only does that if we accept that he does that for us as a free will choice.
I guess the trouble is the way that concept's been used. It can be pretty satisfying for the faithful, for those who choose to watch those suffer the consequences. I think we can all remember stories, historical records of people enjoying being the just. And she puts that with quotes.
There have been dark times in the church's history. There have been dark times in humanity's history. And for the most part, the Christians spent far more time fighting other Christians for doing it wrong than they did fighting other groups.
That's exactly what I mean. I just meant in general. I mean, it's not just Christians I was talking about, but
I mean, the same is true of any nation of substantial age has had its own dark times where bad things have happened.
But it seems to be of the core, part of it is where fighting over I'm right, you're wrong, or I'm with him, therefore I'm with him, her, or that thing, that being, and because of that I
also wonder how much of those conflicts may well have happened anyway. That to some degree, religion may have been being used as an excuse or a justification for what people wanted to do. Medieval kings were very good at paying people to come up with reasonable, just reasons why they should they conquer the other kingdom.
That's true.
Well, look at Ireland here. Did you know that? I think it was the 12th century. The Pope gave dominion of Ireland to the English.
That didn't go over well.
And that was the only time in history we've had an English Pope. And, well, I'm sure you know enough of Irish history to know things haven't gone well.
Yeah.
There is, on a slightly more positive note, another story from Irish history, which I think explains the concept of sin. Some Irish farmers owed rent to their English landlord, and the they'd switched to growing some kind of cash crop, which failed, so they couldn't pay the rent. And they wrote to their landlord and said, "Well, the crops have failed. Can we please be let off the rent this year?" And the English landlord wrote back and said, "No, you have to pay your rent as per the law." But with the reply, he sent a gift of the money to pay the rent with. It's I think a good example of it would be wrong to completely excuse sin, but a person can choose, but God can choose to take it upon himself.
Right.
I feel like I'm talking a great deal.
No, it's just I'm thinking over what you're saying, considering it, comparing it to everything else I've heard.
I mean, what's your own background?
I mean, I guess you could say my parents were kind of, well, they just kind of had a general belief about things. I guess you could say they were cultural Christians. They just kind of said they believed in God and, celebrated Christmas every year, but just kind of had it be the idea of God be a comfort in their lives and left it at that. Whereas, I don't know, they let me kind of decide on my own. If I had questions, they would answer, but ultimately they kind of left it up to me. I believed in God and, became an atheist for a while. After waking up, became an atheist and kind of was an agnostic. Now, I definitely can't really deny the idea that there's some kind of thing or entity or some kind of something beyond me. I guess I'm not sure what the story is behind it. Because I guess for me, when you're someone in life who kind of grew up hearing everyone else tell a story and how people fought over those stories, you tend to try and, not necessarily be more critical, but hear everyone else out and experience the world for yourself. Trying to find what's true, what the real deal is. I guess at this point, so far, when it comes to sin, when it comes to injustice, when it comes to fate, when it comes to God, I guess I'm still sorting it all out.
And that's very, admirable and commendable. You're still young. There may come a time when you find that to progress, you need to pick a path and walk it for a time. There is nothing wrong in spending a period of searching and quiet reflection, but ultimately you may find that can only take you so far, and you don't want to spend your whole life idly searching and for different paths. That doesn't necessarily go very far.
Well, I've thought about, when people told me about a path and that I should follow it and that I should go along it, and that's how I can achieve, some people call it ascension or samadhi, or,
You may well find that some of those paths actually lead to the same place.
Yeah.
But
I guess my path is trying to find mine.
nonetheless, you need to pick one and follow it to get to that place.
I don't know. I guess something about my gut tells me that I appreciate the advice, and that's what everyone's told me. But at the end of the day, you know, I've trusted my gut so far in my life, and
Have
it's
you
actually been,
have you been to university?
yeah.
What did you study?
I studied physics.
And what, to a first degree or something higher?
I was going for, you know, bachelor's, maybe in a master's. But well, ever since I awakened, plans changed. Now I'm just learning. I guess you could say I've taken the road of the polymath, trying to learn everything I can.
But then, that was a time in your life. I mean, there were many subjects you could have studied. You picked one, which is one path among many, and I'm sure that increased your, well, firstly your knowledge of the subject, but also your ability to reason, your critical thinking, and so on. Any
Sure.
subjects, I would hope, at a university would do that.
I guess I see what you're saying. I guess maybe, I don't know, something in my gut tells me, yeah, it's hard to articulate. I guess she leans back, crosses her arms and her leg, or, kind of folds her legs and her arms and tries to lean back.
What about being trapped in someone else's way of thinking?
Sorry, she says.
Are you worried about being trapped in someone else's way of thinking?
I think so. And I'm worried that I'm going to be stuck, trapped in mine.
Well,
but one thing I've learned is I'm learning, and that's to try and worry less.
Well, trapped is a strong word. And you need to get anywhere in life, you need a way of thinking. And sure, I suppose there's always the risk that whichever way you have is too rigid, to limit your worldview. That's rather the flaw of the technocrats. But
yeah, I think it's just a human failing, or not really. I shouldn't really say failing, but no, a failing. Flaw maybe would be the better. It could definitely make you very strong-willed if there's something that you think is true to the core.
Some people find it helps if they find a role model, or we had that. What was it, Miss Ellsworth yesterday? She's a role model to many mundanes, I gather. I'm not sure why. But beyond that, I mean, for in our context, in our way of life, a role model in the sense of some perhaps as a story or a mythic figure, which we feel an affinity to, that we have some elements in common with, that inspires us. I mean, around here we used to have various people, claiming blood descent from various old pagan gods who were practically embodying them. But for Catholics, that's often the lives of one of the saints. For Hermetics, that's often the stories of our founders, or our ancestors. Not all these stories are possibly entirely true. I'm not entirely sure St. George literally fought a dragon. But still, these stories can inspire us.
Yeah.
So it might. I mean, and I'm sure there are other mythologies you can look at. I'd often suggest whatever mythology you consider to be your own culture. So,
I'm from like 5.
well, then you've got quite many to choose from.
Guess so.
Or, given we're in Ireland, possibly Irish mythology.
That's true. I guess I've just been taking a little bit from everyone and trying to see the commonalities between all of them. And something in my gut tells me that if I followed one path, or if I led my life as though I were on one, then I wouldn't be able to fly.
Oh.
I guess is the best analogy that I could use. I wouldn't be able to see I wouldn't be able to see how thin the horizon was and how big space really is. And that
is that an aspiration of yours to venture out to the horizon and beyond?
maybe one day. I hear the dangers and the horrors, but to me, I'm not going out there till I'm ready. I don't know even if I'll make it, but then again, when you go outside, you're going inside. When you're going inside, you're going outside.
It sounds then that you have set a path for yourself. Possibly
The thing is
probably slightly more literally.
Sort of, but the way I think about it is when you can see how many paths there are, I guess the thought goes like this. It's just, for me, it's about trying to live, experience, and understand. And when you try to go beyond, you have to think beyond the idea of a path. You have to think beyond the idea of a center, beyond all the thoughts that you've ever heard or ever known. Anything from positive to negative, everything from the God that you've heard in books, your friends, or even your own ideas. If you really want to try and grasp something beyond, you really have to try and conceptualize things that you've never conceptualized before, that no one has before. So I guess for me, I'm just trying to take in the world, absorb its knowledge like a sponge, and try and, well, I don't know yet. But maybe I will someday. Because I guess I feel that beyond in my dreams. When I look out into the umbra. And in just the way I see the world now, I can see that little... Or I can feel that feeling of the other world.
Sounds like it's a shame you were not with us on the Leviathan mission.
The
Leviathan.
I was there on the Leviathan.
Oh, beg pardon. Well, it's a long time ago now.
That was a crazy experience. I was more focused on making sure I could get my parents than it was cool looking outside the windows though. I suppose I would have liked to have been out there in different circumstances. I mean, I was on the bridge team that first crashed the thing.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So.
I was with the team that salvaged it.
Yeah, I was. I think we were in a different team. We were going to the ephemeral core.
yes, we stopped by there. I boarded with Yuki's team, and yeah,
That
left behind after being affected.
makes sense.
I'm left behind in the stasis pod, not just Agnes. But yes. So, have you spoken much with the traditions who deal with exploring the world beyond?
I haven't yet. I mean, I remember talking a little bit when my first few days awakened with the Ethernauts. I think I still may even have that transponder. If I ever wanted to contact I believe that he was a commissar or a captain. I think he was a marshal of the Ethernauts. He seemed interesting.
I can't sound particularly close to them.
There was Bellic and Nightingale. They were of the Dream Speakers. Bellic was one who kind of helped me grasp an idea for things on the other side. You ever? Do you know Bellic?
No, I don't think so.
Interesting guy. You'd like him. Although lately he must be off. I haven't talked to him in a while. He must be off on some excursion, doing his thing. But I suppose I guess I'm working my way up to maybe one day find a team, or maybe just even on my own and go in there myself.
No, as you say, you're still young. You've got plenty of time. And yes, I don't see why you shouldn't get there. Yeah,
What do you hear?
It sounds to me actually that's very good that you clearly got a long-term goal to work towards. You've got a path to follow.
Yeah. I guess I just don't.
How learned
I don't think about it. I guess I just don't think about it as a path. I just do, right?
A goal, if you prefer. How learned are you in spirits and the spirit world?
I've just been learning how to talk to them. Never would have thought that, being able to converse in my own language would be something that other conscious beings would understand, but it seems to be a more intimate way to speak to them. I can touch the other side, but I can't quite step through. I can make the gauntlet thinner. So I must be close.
Yes, sounds it.
What about you? Do you have any aspirations? What are your goals?
Oh, nothing that way inclined. My parents had no talent there, so it's rather a gap in my own studies, to be frank. Um, hmm. I'm afraid. Well, hope has become one of my major, shall we say, goals. I'm not quite sure where it's going to lead, but still, it does consume so much of my time. I still maintain my mundane career. I think it's important and healthy to have a good balance between the magical and the mundane worlds.
Can definitely attest to that.
This is perspective. Um, I get involved with certain administration, trying to keep the Chantry running. And I don't have my own apprentice, but I mentor various of the younger hermetics. And what else? Yes, and recently there was a a troublesome matter which is rather interrupting my other plans, aspirations. But before I get to that, actually, no. To answer the question the way that you answered it, um, of late I've been started experimenting with creating. How can I best put this? Um, Bringing out the latent properties of objects such as certain stones or minerals and metals in order to convey enchantments. For example, a few days ago, I finished working on a jasper pendant, which allows the wearer to ignore pain.
That's pretty nice. I've been trying to do something similar. I haven't tried to experiment with it yet, but once I get a little bit more, have access to materials, I'm definitely thinking about starting to make basically devices imbued with forged devices that have magical abilities. Basically, advanced technology. So
Uh,
I guess that's something we seem to both be working on.
yes, I'm probably on if in very different ways by the sound of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I say, I mean, hermetic theory stresses there are established associations of, as I say, but it can be based off a material or something's form, its shape, and so it's about finding the right materials which have the innate property to work with. Jasper is associated with healing, and it's on a gold chain. Gold is associated with health.
Health, vitality, life. Yeah.
My previous work, that was my second, was what I called a heartstone, which is a small ruby. Rubies are associated with protecting the body from harm, and it's shaped like a heart, which again associated with body and life. You know, obvious association, and that allows one to resist even enchanted weapons. Or prime imbued effects. Um, so,
Never thought about looking into that from that perspective.
I mean, again, this does bring us back to that debate about number 13. Are these associations? I mean, they exist. They work for me. Are they a fundamental property of the universe, which has always existed and will always exist, or is it because the first person to make the first item used it and it stuck, or something else,
or a bit of column A, bit of column B, but I have a feeling column B.
Or is it just because I've been taught that way, so I think it works, so I do it that way and it works, so clearly it's right?
I don't know, I have a weird sneaking suspicion it's that. Or at least a good chunk of it is that. But who knows?
But then I've been taught that that's the use of Jasper. I've used Jasper that way and it's worked. Now, we can debate whether the causality of that, but the point is, it works. If no one had told me Jasper did that, I might still be scratching my head trying to figure out how to do this.
That's true.
And perhaps once I've been doing it for, say, a lot longer and got a lot better at it, maybe I'll actually I'll feel more confident to experiment with something different and break some of the rules, or see what property a new material has. Maybe something the ancients didn't have access to in quite the same way.
Or maybe you might find a new meaning within the same object. Like recently, I was always recently very annoyed at how anything that was like a pointed rod or any kind of rod or spire was compared with phalluses.
I think we have Dr. Freud to thank for that.
Yeah, but I found a better one.
Mm.
She kind of turns around and points to her back, and she says, "Your spine." Your spine is almost like this rod that gets in that, at the step of it, you have something like the brain, or, when a rod in the middle of a mountainous range is hit, or like a spiky rock, gets hit by lightning. Minds get hit with ideas. When you take the idea of a wand, the mind kind of comes up with an idea, and then the wand almost makes it happen. It's like an extension of the spinal column, right?
The difference being the spinal column is flexible, and the wand or the staff is not.
It's flexible in its uses.
True.
And then again, you could use a material that's flexible.
That one, interesting. That would be untraditional.
So it may not bend and be flexible like the spine, but in its uses it is.
I mean, and
I don't know. It was just an idea I thought of. It helped me get my mind off the penises.
My theory, the purpose of a wand is to control things at a distance. A wand, much as the most simple of symbols, the pointed finger, it clearly exerts one's will at something which is distant. You could also consider to be a gun to be a kind of wand in that sense.
Yeah. Or in Doctor Who, I forgot what they call it. He has this this device that can repair any object or scan any object.
Sounds like a wand.
Yeah. I forgot what it's called. Anyway. But yeah, basically just, again, different ways to see the same thing. And again, just like the spine, it kind of receives the ideas. It can do the reverse. It can send its inspiration out into something else and shape it. So he just shrugs.
You said earlier about your goals and the extent of your current talent with manipulating the spirit worlds. Has anyone trained you in spirits and told you about the different types and names and so on?
Bellic did.
Oh, good. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Told me about the 3 layers, horizon. Told me about so they're Anglings, Gafflings, Jaglings. Past that, you get into this kind of more higher powered beings, such as Incarna, Celestines.
Not really my area, but that fits my understanding. I've been taught about orders of spirits. I haven't really had a chance to study the cosmology of the spirit worlds.
How's those studies been going for you?
I say I haven't So I haven't had that much time to progress them. So it's something I would like to learn more of. I say, it's rather been a gap in my tuition because my own mentors.
I think really the best way to do things with the spirit world is to kind of, encounter it for yourself. With a buddy, of course, because it can be pretty gnarly out there.
I've done that a few times.
Well, the thing is like there's so many things. Like, is that an Engling or is that more of a Jagling? Or, and you don't really know where to fit it, because what Belloc told me was everyone kind of sees the other side a little bit differently. So I may see, some strange globule-like alien that's, shimmering in the windows, but you might see a cherubim or something, right? We all kind of see the spirit world a little bit differently. And even entities can have different masks, but be the same one. So it can be kind of hard to even categorize them then. So the best thing to do is to kind of build your own little log, your own terminology, and try to, in a sense, I guess that's why I asked you that one time to have Hope write, about her dreams or the stories, or her own cosmological story, because it seems that, to kind of get an idea of what the sense of her own universe is. Because the more and more I look out there, the more I realize it's a reflection of in here. And she taps at her chest.
Possibly. Just to take it away from that, nothing seems thoughtful.
Sorry, what did he say?
Sorry, we was taking a moment to chew that over. I suppose that you could see there are the near umbra, which is more akin to, say, our animal drives, and the high umbra is more the realm of our higher thoughts.
Yeah, I remember looking up there. That place was confusing, but cool.
And there are the other places. Well, we briefly mentioned the digital web. There's also the lands of fairy. And yes, there you're certainly likely to encounter stories.
I've heard about fairies and fae, but never met any of them.
No. We have people at our order who specialise in that sort of thing.
Really? I guess that makes sense. They're magical too.
Well, they used to be around a lot more, I gather, back in the Mythic Age. This island full of stories of them. Probably all those stories of the she and the barrows and the Tuatha De Danann.
The Tuatha, I'll be honest, like the Irish had a pretty cool cosmology. The Tuatha seemed pretty cool. The various different artistic depictions of the Dagda and I forget the different names, but they're really cool looking. And you can even see them sometimes in certain areas where there's a lot of presence with Irish mythology.
Yes.
Places that focus on that. There's a lot of cool spirits that hang around there.
I would not be surprised if a lot of I don't know what proportion of the Irish population still believe in them.
Mm-hmm. Although I prefer, I think the best way to see them is souls, honestly. Have you ever, Rupert? Have you ever heard of like Terence McKenna?
No, I don't think so.
He was, who knows? Maybe he was awakened, but he was this proponent of using psilocybin mushrooms to gain knowledge of other dimensions and become more spiritual and all that. And he talked about how Well, I think it'd be interesting because he talked about how maybe the world of spirits is in fact the world of dead souls, and that one day you should respect what you behold, for one day you will become what you behold.
I am aware the mythologies sometimes tangle up the fair folk with ghosts, and yeah, is a banshee one or the other, and they don't quite make the distinction the way that we like to these days.
What I mean is, like, what if?
And that there have been suggestions in the past that the fair folk are literally the spirits of unbaptized babes.
Now here's something that'll really mess with you. What if all the spirits we see are dead people? All of them. Every single one.
Is there any basis to believe that?
Well, I'm not sure. I would just think that there are different ways you can kind of think, like map it out to kind of make it work. You know, there are these conscious souls that engage in these various different activities and build realities. And then sometimes they decide to hop into a reality and become a part of it. So maybe a soul one day several souls decide, hey, this new reality is open to try out. It's called Earth. Hop on in. And some people become humans, some become rabbits, and some become animals. And then when they die, they go back. And maybe they go to a different place. Or maybe they go back because they feel there's something that they could learn there. And maybe sometimes beings on the outside, mess with the program, make things interesting. Maybe a flood here, a strange storm here, and all odd beings out there. This idea that that this reality has been constructed for learning or amusement, and that when you die, you just become a being of pure consciousness once again, and then you can either go somewhere else or come back. She just shrugs.
I'm not sure how to respond to that.
I wouldn't either. I don't necessarily believe this idea, but it's something to think about, for me at least. Food for thought. What's Rupert's expression at this point?
Not sure. I think he's just generally.
Because here's what's really interesting. Look up people on YouTube taking dimethyltryptamine. They all say the same thing, which was, oh, I remember being in this, I remember that I wasn't human, or, something to that effect. Oh, I remember that I remember that I came here, or I remember, basically they keep talking about this idea that they weren't always human, or that they weren't always in this reality.
I don't consider truth to be found in drugs.
Well, it's in your body. Might be produced in your brain. Every single piece of organic life has the ability to synthesize it. There are 75,000 different plants that have it. In fact, the tree Abraham encountered, the acacia tree, had DMT in it.
Our bodies also produce adrenaline, but that doesn't mean you find enlightenment by taking an overdose of it.
I'm just saying it's something to consider. I'm not talking about adrenaline, that makes you go and become a crazy animal that can do anything. I'm talking about something that seems to blast you out, an experience that sometimes seems to blast you out of your body and have you talk to strange entities and meet God. Again, that's part of the experience that most people corroborate. It's one of the few drugs where people have like a very similar experience each time. It's really weird.
The
Again, it's not something you have to put stock in. I don't put a lot of stock into it.
fact that they're aware that's the experience others have, then colours their experience or add their memory of it.
That's true too. But if that were true, people would have the same experience on magic mushrooms or LSD or salvia or a variety of other hallucinogens. But DMT is the one drug where people from various different places and paths on Earth have a consistent staged experience. Whereas with the other hallucinogens, people have very different experiences.
You digressing back slightly, you sound like you've studied the Irish mythology somewhat.
Oh, not much. Just a few Wikipedia articles and reading some books in the library. Was there anything you wanted to know?
There's a reason why it suddenly became awfully relevant to us. It's probably good. Well, just because it doesn't hurt for you to know. Did you see? You may have seen the news articles about archaeologists finding a sarcophagus.
Out of character, was that posted on the Facebook page?
As a rumor.
Let me go read it because Danielle would have probably heard of it. For now, just to keep this quick, she'll say, I must have come across it. Sounds familiar.
So it was found in a megalithic a very old tomb, but it was then dated to about 1,000 years ago. It had, however, Enochian symbols on it.
Really?
Do you understand Enochian?
No.
The symbols translate as something along the lines of chained or bound.
Huh. Interesting that Enochian symbols would pop up on a. What is like? Was it like an Irish? It was an Irish sarcophagus, right?
Yes, dated to more or less 1,000 years ago, or 1,000 years AD.
Were there any like special markings on the sarcophagus?
Well, unfortunately, matters rather got ahead of us, and I'm not quite sure exactly what happened, but the sarcophagus opened, and the thing that was bound was released. You might have also seen the news articles about one of the university buildings being destroyed by fire.
Yes. I was there at the vigil.
That would be the building where the sarcophagus was.
Oh no.
I confronted the individual that came out of it.
She'd look surprised.
So he identified himself in various ways. He's using a Welsh name, which translates as Mordred. I assume you recognise that name.
I do. What's weird is I just recently finished a King Arthur book.
He also identified himself as the High Priest of Balor.
Oh no.
Hence the reference to Irish mythology.
So
He appeared to be of how can I put this? He had the blood of the fair folk in an extremely strong way. For those who can perceive the fairy, he had a third eye in his forehead. Um, he also identified himself as a member or former member of a old Hermetic house. Um,
Really?
we had some discussion with him. He he said he was imprisoned in 990, which would be about, well, a little over a decade before the war that we then fought with them, with his house.
I have a feeling that someone's looking for. I remember someone got in trouble for like that same house. I don't remember who. He's hearing rumors about it. So this person might be out for being a priest of Baelor. Isn't really the best thing. From what I remember, Baelor was kind of the cosmic antagonist of the Irish.
Yes, he's a god of droughts. He's a sun god in the aspect of the burning sun.
And I believe he was king of the Fomori.
Believe that's correct. Yes, and ruled of Tory Island, or simply Tory, which is an island just off the north coast. Um, and Balor had a death geas. He could only be slain by his own grandson, and thereby sought to prevent her grandson being born. And of course, that led to his grandson being born, which eventually slew him. I think there's a lake in the north of here, which is supposed to be where he died, or maybe possibly his eye.
Well, they have someone believing in them. That psychic resonance will eventually carry its way into the Umbra. Who knows what things will be stirred at that point, especially if someone you described that's power with that power.
And well, we're not quite sure of what the nature of Balor is, or the nature of what he's worshipping is. Now, he could be an humble spirit. He could be a fairy spirit of the fairylands, which wouldn't be surprising for the Irish mythology. Or he could, of course, literally be a devil. Or
Or there are multiple Baelors, and they're all those things.
Yes, quite. I mean, most words he's using that name, and of course, he might honestly think he's worshipping one and serving one, when in fact he's serving another.
Yeah.
He appeared to be he's not just a believer; he's literally of Fey blood.
Well,
so we had a discussion with him, which he essentially, we tried to reason with him and offered him hospitality and tried to talk to him about, he's been locked in a box for 1,000 years. He's clearly not going to be very sane. He decided to wander off after swearing enmity next time we meet. He then, a few days later, attacked our chantry in Cardiff and destroyed it.
oh boy.
Apparently, despite the fact that his own house imprisoned him, he took the news that his house was destroyed in a huge bloody war badly.
And I'm guessing they're not on talking terms. Not with the chantry blowing up.
Well, to be honest, I'm rather surprised by the lack of reaction. I would have thought the return of of that house would have resulted in, an awful lot of very, very old masters arrive to deal with it.
Or this is one of those things that no one expected, and no one wants to be held responsible.
No one expects a bogeyman from 1,000 years ago to return.
No one expects the Spanish Inquisition, right?
What was also strange was during the discussion, someone asked him to put out the fire. He started the fire to destroy the box that imprisoned him and burn down the whole building. He did agree to put the fire out before he left. So I saw him do it. Now he he exerted his will upon the world. He appeared to work an act of true magic, but he didn't seem to generate paradox.
She kind of takes it back by that.
As
I mean, I've seen
I had
Prime
on him. He worked true magic upon the world. It's looked a little odd because, as you'd expect, but he seemed to get paradox, but it was immediately negated.
I mean, I've seen that done before when I was in a car chase with the High Marshal when the Templars were taking over the chorus. He was able to do the same thing by taking the quintessence from his blade and using it to negate the paradox of his body.
Okay. Oh, maybe it was something like that then. But that's strange because I wouldn't have thought he'd be imprisoned with the quintessence.
No, but then again, depending on his mastery, he could have just absorbed the ambient matter around him and transmuted it, and then had some quintessence on him. Remember, quintessence isn't everything. It's not that hard to get.
For the right person, it's not.
For the right person, it's not. I'm still having, well, I shouldn't really say that I'm having trouble getting it, but theoretically, if you know how and you're a master like him, it shouldn't be something that's hard to get.
Well, so maybe that was it. We was also thinking that maybe he's a marauder. As I said, he was a box for 1,000 years.
Yeah, that'll do it. Was he conscious that whole time?
Apparently, it was some severely messed up thing. It was like, he was dying, then it was bringing him back to life. He was stuck in perpetual. It was bad. It was bad. We've recovered a small fragment of the box for study. We've got it. It appears to be a strange substance unknown to us. It's more complicated than the technocratic premium. It's fundamentally anti-magic. It seems to reflect magic back. People who look at it have been known to have their eyes start bleeding. So, and as I say, we've got a lot of mythologies going on here. We've got Arthurian mythology, we've got Celtic mythology, and we've got the whole thing about the history of my order. Which, yes, has also surfaced in one or two other ways, but not quite in this quite in your face way before. Hence why I'm looking to find experts on these mythologies.
You may want to talk to Rory. I think he's a part of your order.
Yes, Rory was there and met him.
Oh, he was.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't entirely helpful, admittedly.
Oh, is that so?
Well, Rory decided to open his opening statement was talking about, oh, by the way, we murdered your whole house. Which isn't quite how I'd put it.
She just kind of closes her eyes, like cringing. Yeah, I've worked with Rory before. He's an interesting fella.
I thought he got a little better now he was older, but after that incident, obviously not. So
she shrugs. Is there anything you'd like me to help with this? Seems like a big order affair, but if I can help track, at least maybe get an idea of what's been going on in the spirit world.
Well, if you've got any ideas, as I say, I wasn't sure if you had any background in either of these mythologies. I mentioned it and saying you seem to know something about Celtic mythology, but and the fact it's only fair to warn you in case he turns up.
I'm one who can probably get you where you can get sources of information. I'm not the best source of information myself, at least not right now. I aim to change that.
I mean, I suppose knowing what spirits of the Celtic mythology are saying and doing may well be relevant. I mean, well, when he awoke, the I don't know how to put what terms to use for this.
Well, we could join our minds, and I could help.
fairy itself was disturbed when he emerged from that box, as in the sun turned into an eye.
Oh.
So it clearly had a reverberation across fairy.
Okay.
Um,
She's writing all this down on her phone, by the way. You can see her
okay.
a lot of stylus and.
Yeah, well, the stories of when he attacked Cardiff, he'd acquired some armor with an eye on the front and wielded a huge sword and strode through all the wards and resisted all the magic. So I don't fully understand. I mean, I don't fully understand how it can even exist at this now. Frankly, you would have thought reality wouldn't tolerate someone 1,000 years old walking around.
Marauder theory makes sense then.
And yeah, I don't know what the wide implications are. I don't know what he's doing now, whether he's racing colts, whether he's raising dark fairies, whether whether we're going to start having issues with Balor cultists. I was wondering if maybe, like Balor himself, he's got some kind of death gears. He can be killed in some very particular way.
Were you able to see anything else when you were looking him, with the Tune of Prime?
I don't think so. No, he didn't. When I met him, he did not appear to have a mind shield. But then that's what you'd expect for someone who just would come out the box. But I mean, his whole approach to magic may be somewhat different to ours. So he's from the mythic age, literally. Yeah.
And that gives us an advantage in the sense that we know the reality, our time a little bit better than he does. But he seems to be a master of some kind, or
yes,
worse or better, a marauder.
Well, he displayed at least adept level of forces in the fire, in the fire, and then putting it out. He
And adept is how good?
The 4th rank.
4th. In your system, it goes up to 5.
No, I'm using the general tradition system. Sorry.
Sorry, I'm just still.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah, no. So, adept is the rank below master among the traditions.
Okay.
So
So that's pretty potent.
He also he grabbed some passing mundanes and ripped knowledge of language from them.
She looks horrified at that. Yikes.
I assume copied, not. But I mean, there were 13 casualties in the fire.
Yeah.
And he was holding a mundane to use their mind when we met him. In a casual display of anger, he snapped someone's collarbone with his bare hands. They lived. Hume got to him and did things, and I think he believed the person did survive, but still.
Yikes.
That's clearly a pretty wanton disregard for innocent life.
So how do we want to? So we have the Chronoptic Chronomicon, and now we have this.
Now, yes. Well, I don't know. I'm assuming he's going to turn up here at some point to say he's already attacked Cardiff. He was seen in Edinburgh as well, and then talked out of attacking by Eliza Holt, I think, in Zephyr.
I remember Eliza.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
So
Well, if
So,
you need someone to help you out, I can try and make it.
well, as I say, it seems good to warn you in case he does turn up. And say if you can think of anything that can be done, I don't say.
I'll see if I can't do some spiritual investigations, even though she kind of shakes her head anyway. I'll try and talk to some beings on the other side, and maybe I can find out more on this guy. Maybe there's something out there that remembers him. At least give us an idea of his MO and what he'd be likely to do next. Who knows? Maybe this guy pissed off other beings.
Well, it was
We can get
obviously
there.
he was imprisoned clearly by someone. An inscription talked something. There was an inscription found on the box which has since been destroyed. It talked something about he was imprisoned by his father, but we think that's not meant to be a literal father, maybe a mentor. Imprisoned by his father, it was meant to be sacrificed, and his father couldn't do it, so imprisoned him instead.
Right.
Of course, given if he's Mordred, that father could be Arthur.
Oh boy.
So, yes, I don't know if the two Arthur really are out there. I don't know how they're going to react to the rise of Balor again.
At this point, I've kind of taken on the policy that if someone's imagined it and it's been in culture for a while, it probably exists in some form.
Well, that's certainly true of the Irish, Faye.
So they're probably somewhere out there, whether they're involved in this or this is just some mortal affair. I guess we'll have to see.
No. As I say, within the fairy reality, the sun itself changed to an eye when he awoke.
I'll have to look up if that has any kind of meaning.
Well, Balor is, I assume it refers to Balor of the one eye.
What does it mean for the thing of vitality to have the eye of Balor emerge from it?
Well, I say Balor is the god of drought. He's the wrathful burning sun. So it's considered with it being the sun. I'm not an expert on the Irish mythology. I understand Balor is essentially the inspiration of Sauron.
That makes sense.
And Tolkien's elves are on some level a version of the Tuatha. And the orcs are the.
I can't believe I didn't see it before. I guess people like the Irish myths more than they think.
So I don't want to unduly burden you. I know I'm sure you've got your own things to work on, but
I mean, hey, if it's an opportunity to learn something, I'll see what I can do. I mean, I'm still learning. I feel I don't exactly have... so far I've been really lucky. But so far I don't think I feel quite adept to get in fisticuffs quite just yet. Although I can defend myself if I need to. I just, I guess I'll just go along and see what happens. There is something else I can do. Service you might, that I could do sometime if you want. I have learned how to look into time. If you want me to kind of make some simulations based on what might happen, what this being might do.
Is that?
That's possible.
Okay. But to look into the future.
And look into the future possibilities, yeah, which one might be the most likely.
would you need some kind of connection to him?
Well, really, all I would need is a connection to the place and time. So I could simply, if your mental concept of him would be enough, I would just have to, or an artistic depiction. It would take longer and it'd be a bit harder, but I could do it. But the most important thing is, is there anything important, any place where you expect he might go or affect?
We're not entirely sure why he went to Cardiff and why he hasn't come here. One speculation I had is that he's visited sites which were important 1,000 years ago, or possibly sites connect to Arthurian legend.
There's also another option. We can go back to where the sarcophagus was. Now, that place and time may be warded, I don't know. But I can at least try and dial in on that point in time when he was buried. Maybe even a little before that, so we can maybe explore the deeds of this man.
If that's possible, we go back 1,000 years into the mythic age.
Just up here, yeah. I can make a program of it.
Well, we have the place where the sarcophagus was found. Perhaps look at it exactly who put it there.
Maybe they're still around.
As I said, the sarcophagus is incredibly resistant to magic, so it might be you need to target something like the room outside, not the room itself.
Yeah, we can do that. I mean, it's the same place. Just would have to adjust the coordinates once I got to that place in time.
There was also something else more, which might be easier. We arrived after he awoke. Now, some of us have wondered, was his box? Did he just escape? Was his box opened by mundanes who didn't know what they had? Or did someone deliberately break in and free him? Deliberately. And it's been pointed out that 13 people died apparently in the fire. Now, did they actually die in the fire? Or were they, for example, ritually sacrificed to open the box? Given the significance of the number 13.
Jeez.
There's some speculation here. We don't quite know. Honestly,
Well,
we have more or less the date and time he escaped. It was a couple of weeks ago on Friday. Looking at, for example, the room outside to see who went into that room.
We can do that.
There are a few. I don't want to accuse anyone, but we know there are a few mages in the modern day who have claimed the name of his house. So you can
Well, at this point,
there are at least some vague suspects of people who might have done that.
all right, but I guess from now, best policy is to go with the whole innocent until proven guilty thing.
Yeah, agreed. Though at least that doesn't preclude doing some investigation.
No, it really doesn't. Well, so what we'll do, we can do this tomorrow or out of character when the ST and the players have time, back in character.
Yeah.
We can look on the outside. I can peer through on the outside. Now the worry I have is now going forward, looking forward in time isn't really all that paradoxical because the future is so uncertain. I just have to find a way to make it so that, because I remember doing tests and going back, looking back and I don't know. Let's just say I wasn't brave enough to do it.
Well,
so this will be my first time.
looking back a couple of weeks is probably a lot far easier than looking back 1,000 years. I mean, don't do trouble yourself. I mean, I have other people I can approach to work on this.
The more you have, the better.
Just for completeness, there's something else I should tell you. We had a message like a day or two after he escaped his box from the traditions, as in the Council of Nine. They apparently had a vote. It apparently was close, but they've ruled that this is a private conflict between the Order and his house. It explicitly says other tradition mages are perfectly allowed to help if they want to, but the traditions as a whole are not going to. I don't consider this to be particularly helpful, given his evaluation of callous disregard for mundane life.
Yeah. Well, if it's the Order that put him there, I can see the perspective of certain council mages who maybe, I don't know what the internal politics are, but maybe they say it's your problem, deal with it.
Ironically, it wasn't the Order that put him there; it was the Order that made war upon the people who put him there.
And that's where it gets complicated.
But anyway, that's best at tradition politics that you don't need to get involved in. But anyway, I thought for completeness, it was only fair I mentioned that to you. As I say, I can imagine a scenario where if he keeps doing bad things and we can present evidence he's done a lot of bad things to the council, they might change their minds.
Well, so far, what are the Hermetics doing about it?
To be honest with you, I'm not privy to all those discussions. I'm sure, possibly if I was, I wouldn't be allowed to talk about it too openly, but I'm not. I would have expected a far more overwhelming reaction, to be honest with you.
That is weird.
I would have expected this is one of those very, very few occasions where the Order rises as one. And all the Masters and all the Archmages come out of retirement to deal with this, because I don't think, his house have been our bogeymen for centuries. We never thought they'd return. They're we fought a bitter war and consigned to history, and that should have been it. They're practically a fairy tale designed to scare apprentices with. I never expect to actually meet one. We had enough issues with, as you know, there were a few people in this city of other traditions who were claiming the name because I don't know. I've heard rumors they found an old chantry that was hidden, and they'd taken the name. I'm surprised the Order didn't deal with that, to be honest with you. But then I don't know those people that well. I mean, Liza I know a little bit. Lottie, I think, I gather, is their leader. Do you know Lottie?
I don't know her intimately, but yeah, I know her.
I've only ever been in one meeting with her, I think. So I was quite okay. So this was a meeting at Lord Scisho's when he'd had arrested Yuki, and the representatives of the tradition had gone to discuss with him what to do with her. I'd gone from work, so I was in my legal dress, and I was on that a new occasion. It doesn't happen often. I was asked to represent the order and standing for Croshaw. Lottie openly called for a show trial in those exact words.
She kind of has this like kind of look on her face.
Now you can see why. Well, I'd hope to any reasonable person that's completely morally repugnant, and you can see why to someone who is a lawyer as their profession, that's particularly offensive.
That's not offensive. That's just fucked.
I at that point I stepped in and utterly condemned that. Carly then defended her and said I was. I think she said something along the lines of, "I was insulting people by condemning her," or something.
So if we take that interaction based off what you're saying as a microcosm of the Council of Nine as a whole, then perhaps maybe I'm sensing some kind of tension within the political lines, and they don't really want to help the order right now.
Yes, well, I mean, possibly. I don't. Maybe this cabal of modern Dene, have pulled their own political levers.
I don't know anything about them.
I gather Eliza at least is a quite highly respected in the Etherites. I mean, for my part, I think actually I think I noticed I gained. I mean, I to us don't think so much of tradition status, but I became more respected after that incident because Lord Shiso was impressed that when I stood up to their blatant miscarriage of justice. And frankly, if I could have done it, I would have arrested Lottie there and then for conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. That is actually a high crime, unsurprisingly.
Well, at least there's some concepts of justice somewhere. My impression of the awakened world was that it was the Wild West.
Well,
that whoever had the mightiest power were basically the ones who kind of.
Our order recognised long ago that it would not survive. It's got far too many strong-willed, powerful people in it, unless it had a code of laws. And we've developed one, and we've now had a large body of case law based on that. Yes, I'm aware the other traditions don't have the same kind of formalized system of laws.
Well, it's good that someone has laws.
The traditions have some laws and some basic protocols. They're not, but they don't enforce the way ours are. But I mean, any society needs laws.
A lot of people would disagree with you on that. I'm not necessarily one of them, but I can see why people would think that maybe there are such things as societies that could not have laws, but you need a very different kind of world for that kind of system to work. I don't know.
So yeah, the modern Dene. I mean, judging them based on purely on themselves, not on supposed crimes the Dene of old were convicted for, could openly attempt to pervert the course of justice, and I know full well that, they would seem to be linked to people who were hopefully harbouring Yuki when she was a confessed infernalist. So
those are some serious accusations there, man. I mean,
given their house was destroyed on massive charges of infernalism and again political crimes, perverting our democratic processes, and their modern Dene immediately start harbouring the infernalist and perverting the course of justice. But still, I don't know to what extent they are involved in this. I gather Eliza talked more to Adam attack in Edinburgh. So I think at this point we simply need to investigate investigate Mordred as best we can, and that includes investigating the circumstances around his escape from the box. As in, was it just a thing that happened? Was it due to mundanes opening the box, or was it due to someone deliberately opening the box? I mean, they may well not have known what was in there, whoever it was.
I guess we'll have to organize and plan something.
So,
and then I'll try and talk to some conscious entities and see what they, find out more myths and see if any of them know anything about this guy, and maybe we can find some spiritual help on this one.
Yes, I mean, I assume there must be spirits who oppose Balor.
Letting him know that one of his agents is around kicking might, who knows, maybe we'll have a little bit more patrols going around in the Umbra.
Well,
and then what about this chronoptic chronomenon stuff? You think we should try and find Abigail again? Talk to her about the ciphers?
Possibly. I think that might be difficult. I'm not sure she's going to be up for sharing much information. Cypher 9, I'm sure, is a problem that would turn up sooner or later. If he's hiding the deep umber in the behemoth, I'm not sure there's anything we can practically do about him until he makes his move.
Yeah, at least we can build up some information.
We have one or two technocratic defectors who might be able to tell us some more about him.
Let's just hope everything goes okay.
But yeah, but at another level, the part of the reason for this ceasefire was so that both sides could clean up their own houses. And it sounds like we've got bad elements in the traditions to clean up, and just as the Tenocracy have got Cypher 9 to clean up.
It seems like a good idea to start taking that initiative seriously. Have an example of that actually happening so that the story can spread to everybody else, right? So maybe for the we should find some information on Cypher 5. Talk to, maybe find Abigail and talk to those technocratic dissidents.
Yes. Well, I could try and speak to, I know at least one defector from the Theocracy. He may have some information on the Cypher project. But however much I would like to continue this, I really do have to be going, given the time.
Yeah, it's been. I think I might hang out here a little while. It was nice talking to you, Rupert.
Well, and you. Thank you. Sure, we'll see.
Tell Hope I said hi.
I will. Well, I don't need to. Remember, if
I know.
She
heard me. Fair enough.
Until next time.
Till next time.
Thank you, players. Thank you, watchers, for watching another episode of Darkness in Dublin, where two mages talk for hours about philosophy and saving the world.